FiiO, now that is a name which is very popular with manufacturing or producing digital audio players. So let's just quickly have a look how many digital audio players FiiO have released so far. Based on what I can see here, right, they have already released like 25 digital audio players throughout the years. And based on that number, this FiiO M23 in my hand right now here, okay, this is the latest one from FiiO, okay. This is a very solid device. Let me just show you. If you are based in Malaysia, all right, the placement for this M23 is somewhere after M17, M15, and on par to M11, which means that this is the third highest digital audio player from FiiO among the many that they have, okay? And it carries something which I would consider as kind of a bit premium on the price itself, because as you can see here, if you are based in Malaysia, you can get this M23 already, okay, from Red Ape Audio Malaysia, as you can see here, priced at 3,300 Malaysian ringgit, okay? And internationally, that would translate into somewhere in between 700 to 710 US dollar. So it's kind of a bit pricey, okay? But let me just show you what you're gonna get, okay, from this package. And I will not be doing extensive unboxing of this because you might have seen my other unboxing video at which when I received this kind of like almost over two weeks ago, okay, this one. But let's just have a closer look at the build and the construction. If you are familiar with FiiO M11, especially FiiO M11 Plus ESS, then you would realize that, as you can see here, placed side by side, this M23 and M11 Plus literally share the same chassis, build, construction, dimension, and even probably weight as well, with just minor changes on some of the areas which I will highlight later. Now let's have a closer look at the features, some of the important ones for this M23. Let's start with the setting itself. Click into this About device and you would see that this M23, an Android digital audio player, runs on Snapdragon 660, which is kind of a bit very popular nowadays. You're going to find this same processor in many other DAP in the market nowadays. And let me just show you this. It is quite snappy, I would say. I am very happy with the performance. I was able to do multitasking and I open up so many windows here, like this Hebe, then switching between tasks. I have no complaint when it comes to this performance of this device, okay? And let's just go back here. The most important one would be this one, the DAC used inside this M23, which is AK4493EX with AK4191. So these two, rest assured, are the topmost, the top range from AKM. And it is also equipped with this dual amplifier of THX AAA 78 Plus. So on that aspect alone, you can expect top-notch performance from this M23 when it comes to audio. Okay, let's just have a look at some of the other details which I think very important as well, which is the battery. It comes with 5,500 mAh of battery inside this thick body here and capable of running up to 9 hours. I have tested it running on Tidal, streaming, maximum resolution, 4.4 mm balance, okay? Continuously, I was able to score close to 9 hours. So that is definitely impressive. However, I like to highlight something very important, especially if you run on high gain mode and you enable desktop mode as well, okay? I can feel that this M23 heated up quite a bit. I can feel the heat coming from this device as if this thing is running on Class A amplifier. So pay attention to that, okay? And then let's just have a look at some of the hardware feature. 5.49 inches of display here, okay? And it is pretty much rated as QHD resolution with this 720 x 1440. The display is quite good, vivid, if you use it indoors like this, okay? But I must say, once you walk out into a bright, situation like outdoors, under direct sunlight, then I have found that the display kind of a bit very dim. It is kind of very difficult to see the content. So just remember of that. And when we look at the other important element, 4 GB of RAM. So for a digital audio player, 4 GB is more than enough. I have shown you earlier, it is quite snappy, capable of running, multitasking, no problem. However, I like to highlight that it only offers 64 GB of storage space. Now, for something which is priced at 700 US dollar, I think FiiO should have at least try to include 256 GB, because with this 64 GB, you're gonna get at around 43 GB of usable space, which also means that you can only fit in it at around just over 300 FLAC format songs. And for your information, I have over almost 3,000 songs. So I can only fit in 300 songs locally, unless I use micro SD here, okay, which is like only supportable. It doesn't support the full size SD. It support only micro SD, just like a SIM ejector here, and support perhaps up to 2 TB. Then you can only expand how much you want to store inside here, okay? And then let's just have a look. It also support Bluetooth, okay? Now let's talk about the power itself. I have shown to you earlier that it has dual THX amplifier. The rating for this M23 is rated at 1000 milliwatt of power, which is quite high at 32 ohm, running 4.4 mm balance, and even when pushed to 300 ohm, driving something like this Sennheiser HD600 here, you're gonna get 240 watt, 40 milliwatt of power, which is super impressive. But the caveat is that you must run super high gain mode, okay? Because if you run normal high gain, you're just gonna get 475 milliwatt of power and 55 milliwatt of power at 300 ohm. That is high gain. Let me just show you this. The normal high gain, as you can see here, just 3, okay, running as it is from the battery directly, medium and low as well. And in order to achieve high gain mode, you need to attach something like this, which is a PD 3.0 quick charge, or in this case, I am using Xiaomi 66 milliwatt, 66 watt of USB. Attach it to this USB port here, the one which is marked in red orange. This one is for the data. So attach it like this, and you would see something happen here. Okay. Switch on to desktop mode. Okay. And then now it says here, congrats, you just unlock hidden gain mode, which is super high gain mode, and enable it. And you would see here, now you have access to super high gain. And this is where this M23 literally perform like a desktop DAC amp running 1000 milliwatt of power at 32 ohm or 240 milliwatt of power at 300 ohm. Super impressive. But the caveat is that you must get it attached with this power and run USB desktop mode. And how good is the power? Let me just try to show to you. I have tested this extensively using this Sennheiser HD600 here, okay? And you would notice here, right, even in low gain, okay, it offers me at around 108 of volume in order to achieve proper listening loudness in 3.5 mm single-ended. And at the highest setting, okay, in super high gain mode, I only needed 62 out of 120 driving this Sennheiser HD600. So you can see it is practically, it needed only 50% of power from this M23 to fully drive this Sennheiser HD600. That is super impressive. And let's just talk about the way it presents the sound. I would even say that this M23 is already impressive when it comes to power, even running on 3.5 mm single-ended termination in low gain mode, driving that Sennheiser HD600. However, when you switch to super high gain mode or even high gain, okay, at 76 out of 120 volume, I was already hearing the kind of sound in balance mode, better separation, better imaging, and better authority to the sound itself. So, manner of saying is that when I run 3.5 mm single-ended with this Sennheiser HD600, it does sound good. It does sound, wholesome, but the difference is just audible when you switch to super high gain mode. Just remember that. All right. So now let's talk about the other sound aspect of this M23. You would notice there's a button here. Okay. If I press this, hold on, let me just do this. okay, the button here, press long, you're going to be given some shortcut, okay, to perform some of the function, which I will not indulge too much on it, but I do want to show you this. Okay, now I am already playing on Tidal, okay, so with this song playing in the queue now, okay, and let's just talk about this. I know this is very important to many people, and for the record, I am not an EQ person, okay, let me just admit it. I don't like to use EQ, but for the sake of clarity, for the sake of this review, I'm just going to show you this. This M23 offer, okay, you just need to enable it. Let me just enable. Okay, enable already. So as you can see here, 10 different level of, let's say, or 10 band EQ, which you can adjust manually in custom mode. Or if you want it to be simple, you can switch to rock or switch to classical, right? And I will tell you this, I have tried using this custom and switch it like this, maximum like this. I am not hearing any kind of distortion. It is quite effective at changing the sound curve, which means that it is now very bassy, okay? However, it works perfectly with something which is highly scalable like this Sennheiser HD600 or even this Hi-Fi Man Sundara. But if you try to do this on highly sensitive IEM, something which, let's say, with the impedance rating lower than 16 ohm or with sensitivity above 110, if you do this, then you might get distortion, meaning that you're pushing beyond the limit of that driver to handle this kind of boosting, okay? So like I said, I prefer not to use equalizer. But if you want to do even a bit more of advanced tuning, you can change to this, which is advanced, and it will allow you to do even more refined adjustment. Okay, just gonna reset this first. Okay, and I will show you this. Another effect which I really love about this. Let's say that I use the EQ enable, but I let everything flat. Okay, no coloration. What I do love is that this part here, which is the effect. Okay, and then you notice here, stereo expand. What does it do? Okay, this is the best part. I really love this. Okay, what it does is that it expands the sound. So if you want wide sounding sound stage for something which is relatively close sounding like this HD600, then you'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised that it gets really holographic and wide open sounding when you play with this stereo expand. Super impressive. I love it. That is perhaps one of the few times which I really like to tweak with the sound itself. And let's just have a look at some of the sound feature. All right. So I'm just going to show you this. Another feature which I think very important. You see here, you can switch to DSD or non-DSD. So what this button does is that, okay, if you click to all to DSD, okay, and it will say enable all to DSD now. When you do this function, okay, it's just going to get a bit hot because it requires a bit more of processing on the DAP side to handle all those sort of things. But what will happen is that it will resample everything to DSD format, regardless of which player you use. By the way, this M23 runs on Android, and the good thing is that just like many other good DAP, it does not have any kind of SRC limitation. So you can practically run Tidal, okay, like this one, or UAPP, like this one, or even Hibi Music app, okay, and you can be rest assured that it will always play in beat perfect mode. No resampling unless you enable this all to DSD, okay. Superb, right? And of course, it has an option for you to toggle for these two, okay. 3.5mm single-ended will offer SPDIF and also line out function. But be very careful with this because if you insert in-ear monitor there and you enable either one of these, okay, to line out mode, the volume will be maximum. So just be very careful. It's either you're going to blow your in-ear monitor or you're going to blow your own ears. You don't want that to happen. All right. And then let's just have a look at some of the other options. Okay, I'm just going to show you this in audio setting, which I really like. Okay. You can also change the filter. And most of the time, I prefer to use slow roll-off filter. And I will admit one thing. The filter seems to be working on this M23, but not as effective as other device which I have tried. So it does require quite a bit of, let's say, testing on my part to find out which headphone or IEM works best with this. So in this example, it seems to be working quite good with this Hi-Fi Man Sundara here, but not so much for Sennheiser HD600. But because I guess Sennheiser HD600 is not so responsive to filter change. And of course, you would notice this, Hi-Fi boost mode. If you enable this, again, it will tell you, okay, Hi-Fi boost mode. After enabling the Hi-Fi boost mode, it will provide higher power output in battery mode. Meaning that if you detach this, so no super high gain, but you just run on high gain, you want the best possible power from this M23, just enable this. But two things will happen. It will get hotter and the battery lifespan will get shorter as well. So you get some, you lose some, all right? Just gonna enable it for the sake of testing. And you can also set a few other settings here, which is super impressive and one of the reasons why you want to have a dedicated DAP. Let me show you this, how versatile is this M23, okay? As you would notice here, okay, not just being a DAP, you can also change the mode, all right? So if you choose here, we have been running on Android mode, which means that this thing is capable of running just like a normal Android, being online and everything. But if I switch this to pure music mode, then what will happen is that you're going to be running just purely on local playback using FiiO app here. So I can just simply play this, for example, right? Click this, and this is playing locally from the FLAC file stored inside this device, okay? But if you want to use other player and you want to do streaming, definitely you need to choose back to Android mode, okay? And then you would notice also, you have an option to switch to USB DAC mode and also Bluetooth receiving mode and AirPlay. As it is, this M23 is a very well-designed digital audio player. Being Android, it means that you can do a lot of things on this device, okay? Not limited to what is being offered out of the box. You can install so many things for as long as you have the space to do it. The key thing is that you can tune it. You can customize it to your liking. As noted earlier, this M23 comes with AKM flagship level digital audio processor, and it is also equipped with THX dual amplifier. So you can expect top-notch audio performance from this M23. So let's just try to simplify it. You might have seen my review on this another FiiO product, which is Q15, which I really love. The two of them pretty much identical when it comes to digital audio processor. Both of them running on flagship AK4499EX DAP inside. But the difference being is that this M23 comes with THX dual amplifier and Q15 does not have THX. But somehow, for whatever reason it is, this Q15 offer higher power with ultra high gain if you run in desktop mode at 1006 milliwatt of power. And this, as I have shown you earlier, is limited to 1000 milliwatt of power in super high gain mode in desktop mode. So if you ever need even more power, Q15 is still the one that I would recommend. The caveat is that you need to attach it to a host, an Android phone or even a PC, okay? And when it comes to the sound tuning itself, how does it sound like? The good thing about this M23 is that I classify it as being faithfully neutral throughout the entire frequency range. Yes, I do not hear any kind of coloration, be it in the upper frequency, lower frequency, or even the mid-range itself. In comparison, when I reviewed this Q15 the last time, I did mention that there's a bit of coloration, okay, with the way it presents the sound itself. Because this Q15 does appear a bit more enhanced, a bit richer sounding with the sound texture itself, especially when it comes to the mid-range and the lower frequency. Okay, it is also a bit more smoother, a bit more closer to traditional AKM sort of sound tuning. On the other hand, this M23 is something which I classify as being a bit more transparent. less coloration, but still rich and smooth with the way it presents the sound as compared to ESS saber sort of tuning. So if you love AKM sort of sound, definitely it will be very easy for you to love this M23 because what you're gonna get, something which is highly analytical, powerful, musical, and non-offensive at all with any of the frequency range, especially in the upper frequency. Despite, running on something which is relatively brighter, like this Sundara here, or even my Sony MDR7506 here, or even my Atimotic ER2XR here, I am not hearing any kind of edginess to the sound itself. There's no sort of sibilance or anything like that. Even when I am playing highly picky sort type of music, rock, metal, or even highly pitched instrumentals, or even soprano type of vocal, this M23 has proven to be quite smooth and being highly analytical at the same time. So we are talking about proper balance here when it comes to the sound presentation. I also did mention earlier that this M23 does appear identical to another FiiO DAP which was released over 2 years ago, which is the M11 Plus ESS saber. And have a look here. As the owner of this M11 Plus, and I believe you have already spent quite a bit of time just now comparing between the two of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say, what is the impression of the differences that you would describe between these two?
I find that the M23 has better textured bass. I do find that the M11 Plus, maybe the mids are slightly stronger.
Slightly stronger.
Yeah. I also find that maybe the M23 has a bit more analog sound. Not really. It's very, very minimal in terms of the difference.
Minimal differences.
Yeah.
So how about the staging itself, the openness of the sound?
I find M23 seems to be better.
Surprising, right?
Yeah.
Because this is AKM. Because my knowledge is that for anything AKM especially, normally you don't get that kind of sound stage. But I am surprised as well, as much as Ben, that this M23 running on AKM actually sounded wider. And this is what I have, heard so far. Using this Atimotic ER2XR here, which is my reference. After spending some time comparing between the two of them, and I can only describe this way. Okay. This M23 is a bit more refined with the way it presents the macro detail. Okay, hence you mentioned just now the mid-range is kind of a bolder. In specific, I would even say that the upper mid-range would offer a bit more of edge to the sound itself. Perhaps because it is an ESS saber kind of thing. And in contrast, M23, the decay state all the way from the upper mid-range all the way to the treble decay is definitely smoother. So that's the keyword that I would say. And the texture and the definition of the sound itself is just slightly richer. Just a bit richer, analog sounding. And both are highly analytical, equally, I would say. Right? Fairly analytical between the two of them. It's just that if you want a bit more of that, if you are, let's say, a long time user of ESS saber, then you definitely would appreciate this M11 Plus energy. Okay, when it presents the dynamic transient. But if you want a bit more of refinement, smoothness, then I think the improvement that M23 offer is the overall smoothness of the sound itself. So that's pretty much self-explanatory, right? The difference between M11 Plus and this M23. So I hope you get an idea why you would want to choose one over the other. And let's just compare it with the rest of the competition in the market nowadays. I will admit one thing. My experience with digital audio player is not that so much, but at least let's just quickly recap on what I do have. Okay, as you can see here, at around almost like 3 years ago, I used to have these two digital audio player from Cayin, which is the Cayin N3 Pro that runs on AKM AK4493 tubes hybrid, and also the higher end model, which is Cayin N6ii with E02 module running on dual ESS saber ES9038Q2M. So if I am to compare with the two of them, I would just simply say that the tuning for the N3 Pro, because it runs on AKM, is pretty much similar to this M23. The difference being is that I would just simply say this M23 is more refined with offering better resolution and imaging and also more wide open sounding, okay, as compared to that N3 Pro. And when it comes to resolution and imaging, it is comparable to Cayin N3 E02 module. But the difference being is that you would notice that this E02 Cayin N3 run on dual ESS saber, the module which I have chosen for that DAP. And I can just simply say this M23 is more, should I say, smoother, okay, compared to that N62. And that is one of the reasons you no longer see that I am using that, because it is just simply too analytical, too technical, and not so much on being musical. I can perhaps change the module to AKM, but I opted not to use it because after that, I switched to dongles. After I sold off those two Cayin digital audio player for quite a while, for over, let's say, 2 years, I have been running on dongle and phone setup. You might know that because that is pretty much the dongle madness phase. And only recently, I decided to switch into using digital audio player again, and I opted to use this legendary Sony PCM D100. And so happened that this Sony also runs AKM DAC chip inside from Sony. But the key thing is that when I compare between this, and pretty much comparison of this Sony DAP against so many other devices, including this, I will just openly admit this is still something which I would prefer more over anything else, because the tuning for this PCM D100 is super special. The kind of Sony traditional analog, yet very analytical and super smooth, rich and dense sounding output, okay, that you can expect from any digital device. It would be kind of a bit extreme for me to claim this, but to me, this is definitely endgame depth for me, and still is, okay? Let me just clarify that openly. But the thing about this PCM D100 is that it's just so clunky. You would notice this is a recorder, not a digital audio player, and it can only play local FLAC file with this very clunky interface here, black and white. So no streaming, no nothing. The appeal of this M23, I get something which is closely resembling that PCM D100, but on top of that, I got a lot of other modern feature which is more relevant to our daily usage. And of course, last but not least, M23 versus one digital audio player come mobile phone, which I have reviewed recently, which is the Moondrop MIAD01. I know I have to mention this because you might be asking what happened to that device. You see, that MIAD01 was very impressive already. I like it, you know. I have been using it for quite a while as my primary phone, but it is no longer with me because after I received this M23, suddenly, right, I have found myself liking this even more. Okay? And also, I have given that MIAD01 to my daughter, which happened to be a big fan of Moondrop. So she loved it. So I told her, okay, you can have it because now I have M23. So I hope you can understand, right, the notion behind why I am saying this. This is just simply superior when compared to MIAD01.